All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Adara Aiken, and today we are going to be talking about education in the 20th century. So, the purpose of education in the 20th century really changed over time. Early in the century, education was seen as just to prepare for a job or some sort of work, kind of like trade school. It really emphasized on skills and whatnot. And then as the century progressed, education became a tool for actually like learning and not necessarily focusing on trade, but broadening your education and your intellect. All right. As a continuation, we're going to talk about other purposes. So you needed to have training to be a teacher. Education increasingly prepared individuals for industrial and technological roles, especially after World War II, but things started to change after. And then citizenship schools created, like, they focused a lot on civic education because of patronism and stuff like that, especially during like the 50s during the Cold War. And then in religious training, in some parts of like the United States, religious like education was super important, but on other like areas it really didn't matter. Things changed in that sense. And then compulsory schools were compulsory schooling laws made it so that children had to go to school, and it also gave more access to schools as they went on. Excuse me. What did education look like for children in the 20th century? In the 20th century, education became mandatory in many places. Boys often had more opportunities, and minorities did not have any opportunities at all. And it focused on critical thinking. It switched from that area. And then women were also allowed to go to school. So I think I skipped a tab. Yeah, okay. Gender, boys often had better access to education, obviously. Minorities did not have very good access to education. Socioeconomic status, well, obviously, if you have more money, you get to go to better schools. And then religious affiliations. Religious schools played a really important part, like Catholic schools and whatnot. All right, types of schools. Student attended public, private, and religious schools. Public were obviously the most common because they were the most accessible. Location and duration. Urban areas had better access to schools, obviously, and rural areas didn't have very good availability. And then most of the time, education was 6 to 8 years or 4 to 6 years. And then tuition, public schools are often funded through taxes and whatnot, which is still the case. And private schools are tuition based. Most teachers, like especially young school teachers, were women, unmarried, and it was a really respected profession for women. And then like higher education were usually male teachers. And then teachers were trained in normal schools or teacher training colleges. This was like a trade school pretty much instead of going to actual college. And then teachers were paid by the government through taxes. All right, ethical issues. There was a lot of inequality in the access based on gender, race, and your socioeconomic status. You had a harder time getting access to schools. And then there were also funding challenges. Public schools, especially in the rural areas, which we just talked about, struggled to have money in order to pay for schools, to fund the schools. And then there was also a lot of debates on what should be taught in schools during this time, because it was a switch from the traditional values to the newer, more intellectual values. So that was a different issue. And then two influential individuals, Maria Montessori. She was an Italian educator and physician. She emphasized like the importance of hands-on learning and using intrinsic motivation to help the children. And her methods still continue to influence today. And then there's John Dewey. John Dewey was an American philosopher and educator. He believe like learning through experience is really important, and critical thinking or problem solving is really, really important, and just like creating a school that creates